Over the years, many women's activists in Sudan have been arguing for the importance of integrating a gender perspective into major political and other questions in Sudan. And usually the response would be, oh, people are being killed, they can't find the basic needs, and a concern with gender is a luxury. And so what we have seen in Darfur proves that it's not a luxury, really. And it proves, as I said earlier, the extent to which gender and race are central to conflict situations in Sudan. Generally, it's like, I consider it as the social and cultural construction of the difference between the sexes. And integrating a gender perspective means the restructuring of power and wealth. When we talk about the same political questions that the warring groups are talking about, restructuring power and wealth in a way that would empower women and that would remove the institutional and structural discrimination against women in Sudanese laws, in Sudanese communities, and so on. In the case of the South, if we look at the JAM process, the Joint Assessment Missions process and report, this is a good example of a process that has tried really to integrate a gender perspective. They have developed a gender strategy and they have integrated a gender perspective to a lot of what is on the report. There are some areas that are lacking, but a lot has been integrated into the report. It is important also to make sure that there is a future commitment to CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and without reservations, and to change the laws that discriminate against women in Sudan. We need to look at women in Darfur as agents of change and not only as victims. So it's very important to ensure women's full participation in the Darfur peace process in compliance with the Security Council Resolution 1325. This is a very important resolution. Again, some people might be concerned about الناس في شنو and الحسانية في شنو في Sudan. We say الناس في شنو والحسانية في شنو is not relevant now talking about, we are talking here about women who are being raped, we are talking about women whose children are being burned, whose villages are being destroyed. Why would you bring about issues of women's political participation in, or women's participation in peace talks and UN Security Council resolutions? Well, if we look at the men are being killed even in more numbers compared to women, yet this has not prevented them from taking part, from participating in peace negotiations. It's important also to make sure that women in the long run really have proper training to take part in these negotiations and other activities as well in terms of conflict resolution skills, leadership skills, personal development, literacy, and so on. And also to ensure that women at the grassroots level are empowered to take part in these negotiations. Sometimes people say that, oh, women are not, those women are not educated, they can't read and write, how can they take part in these negotiations? They are very wise women, and they have got their own mechanisms of peace building within the community, and they should take part in these negotiations. At the level of the international community, especially human rights organizations and humanitarian organizations, they have played very important roles so far, and this needs to continue more and more. However, I think it's also important to try and build the capacity of women's local organizations and to try and build these organizations even from scratch if they do not exist. And also to build the capacity of women's organizations that are in exile. And there are some strong Sudanese organizations in general in exile that have been able, for example, to go to Darfur and to do some work there and to work with international organizations, but also smaller organizations need to be empowered and be part of the process as well. UNIFEM has reported that there are very few active organizations in the region. There is Ahlam Foundation in Niala, which is supported by UNICEF, and where there is a woman who had studied in Al-Ahfad University who is carrying out a child protection project in Kalma camp. And there is also reference to the Sudanese Women's General Union that they collect zakah and they redistribute it in the camps. Again, this is connected to the government, this organization, really, and I don't know to what extent that people would trust it. I believe that in particular, that we are talking about women and the conflict in Darfur, that women from Northern Sudan, we should do more, really, and to exert more pressure, not only to put an end to the atrocities together with people from, from local organizations, from the international community and so on, but also because we do not want to repeat what has happened in the south and in the Nuba Mountains. In 1999, I was doing research in Nairobi, interviewing women's groups and other political actors as well about the peace building and conflict in the south and in the Nuba Mountains. And at the time, I spoke to Pauline Ria, who is the chair of SWAN, Sudanese Women's Association in Nairobi. And she said to me, what she said to me, I will never forget. She said, it is unfortunate that we've not had greater contact with Sudanese women in the north. We have a problem as southern women with our northern sisters, because for us, war is war and death is death. And we feel that all of us as nationals and as women should condemn all killings, full stop. But it was sad for us that our northern sisters said nothing about the war. They made no outcry that we heard of about the war when our children or our husbands were being killed in the south. The only time that concern started coming about was when northern men began to be killed. So for us, we have a serious problem, and it tells us in principle that the ideology and the socialization of northern women are probably not different from the socialization of northern men. Which I started out by saying that it's a racist ideology, one of inferiority and superiority, where those who consider themselves Arabs, not Muslims, Arabs, feel that the non-Arab is a less person who deserves to be, wiped out of the face of the earth. I'm really pointing out that this is not a new phenomenon that came with the NIF. It is a reality of Sudanese history. We need to learn from this experience and not to let the women of Darfur think in the same way. Of course, I discussed with Pauline further, and she said that she acknowledged that some of the women activists, like Ustaz Fatma Ibrahim, have done some work around that, and others as well. But this is the perception really, and we should not repeat that really. Of course, at present, here in London, demonstrations have taken part, and women have taken part in these demonstrations, but not as many women as should participate. Even women from Darfur were not able to take part, and again, that is because of the division of labor between Sudanese and other communities. Most of the time, the men would come to the demonstration, and many of the women would stay with the children. They would have liked to take part. And in Khartoum, I know that there is some work taking place with Muta'awinat and with the Seha, Eastern Sudan, for example. That's a very important area, and also in the northern Blue Nile. And finally, I believe that one of the main reasons for holding this conference, in addition to the issues that have been mentioned by the Darfur Center, about holding needs assessments, looking at immediate needs, and looking at solving injustices and highlighting the issues that are that atrocities that are taking place in Darfur. It is for the center itself to put together a program of action for the future, to be informed by the discussions in this conference. I think this is very important. And I think that in Sudan, one of the things that we need to do, in addition to what has been taking place so far, is to try and challenge the mentality of exclusion of the other, and particularly challenge racism and sexism in Sudanese societies. Again, it's about the dominant ideologies, the dominant discourses, and looking at people as less than human. Some people are less than human, and as such they are. Others are more equal than them, using George Orwell's. At present, I don't personally go to Khartoum for political reasons, but if I had been there, I would have formed, like a branch of Women in Black, for women to come to somewhere in central Khartoum every week and hold the vigil in protest of what's happening in Darfur. Also, what is happening in Darfur could be repeated elsewhere, as was the case with the south and with the Nuba Mountains and so on. And we need to look at the suffering of women in other areas and potential, like large-scale oppression. So if people are not defined as human beings in dominant ideologies, why should they be entitled to any rights, the right to security, the right to food, the right to bodily integrity, and so on? We need to look at, I'm going back to the testimony I referred to earlier, we need to look at the cultural, legal, and social discourses that have been used to construct the boundaries of Sudan itself as an imagined nation, and also the boundaries between different ethnic groups within Sudan. And if the center manages to do that, or to start to do that, then it will have been able to make a unique contribution, not only for the people of Darfur, but for the country as a whole. Thank you very much.